Form CLETS-001 gives California law enforcement the details needed to enforce a restraining order, but it is never placed in the public case file. Here is why it is confidential and how it is used. What is Form CLETS-001? Form CLETS-001, confidential CLETS information, is completed alongside the form that requests a restraining order, such as DV-100 in a domestic violence case or CH-100 in a civil harassment case. It asks for identifying information about the protected person and the restrained person, so that if the judge grants an order, law enforcement has what it needs to enforce it. Unlike the request and order forms in a case, CLETS-001 is not meant to be read by the public, and the court handles it differently once it is filed. Why it is confidential? CLETS-001 collects sensitive identifying details, including physical descriptions, dates of birth, driver's license numbers, and vehicle information, so that law enforcement can positively identify the restrained person if the order needs to be enforced. Because this information could put a protected person at risk if it were made public, and could be misused if it were widely accessible, California Rules of Court Rule 1.51 treats it as confidential and limits who can see it. Key takeaway: CLETS-001 exists specifically so that identifying details needed for enforcement do not have to appear in the public case file. The confidentiality protects both parties and keeps sensitive information limited to the people who need it to do their jobs. Not filed in the public case file. Under Rule 1.51b, Forms CLETS-001 and CLETS-002 must not be included in the court file. This means that, unlike DV-100, DV-110, CH-100, or other request and order forms in your case, CLETS-001 does not become part of the record that opposing parties, attorneys, or the general public can review by looking at the case file. Instead, the court either transmits CLETS-001 directly to a law enforcement agency for entry into the California Law Enforcement Telecommunications System, CLETS, or enters the information itself. Once the information has been transmitted or entered, the court is required to destroy the form or delete it from its records, rather than retain a copy in the file. How law enforcement uses it. When a judge grants a restraining order, the information from CLETS-001 is entered into CLETS, the statewide database law enforcement uses to look up active protective orders. If you provide a date of birth, the information can also be entered into a federal law enforcement database, which helps the order be recognized and enforced outside of California as well as within it. In practice, this means that if a restrained person is stopped by police or a protected person calls law enforcement to report a possible violation, officers can check CLETS to confirm the order exists, see its terms, and identify the restrained person quickly. When you need it. CLETS-001 is generally required whenever you are asking a court for a restraining order that will be entered into CLETS, which includes domestic violence, civil harassment, and elder or dependent adult abuse cases, among others. It is filed along with your request form, such as DV-100 or CH-100, at the same time you start your case. Because CLETS-001 is meant to travel with a case from filing through enforcement, courts generally ask for it up front rather than later. What information it asks for. CLETS-001 asks for identifying details about the protected person and the restrained person, generally including full legal name and any known aliases, date of birth, sex, height, weight, and hair and eye color, driver's license or identification number, vehicle make, model, color, and license plate if known, home and work addresses. You are not required to provide every detail if you do not know it or do not have it, but providing as much accurate information as you can helps law enforcement identify the restrained person quickly if the order needs to be enforced. Key takeaway: it is common not to know every detail about the restrained person, such as a driver's license number or exact vehicle description. Updating your information. If details change after you file, such as a new address, a new vehicle, or updated contact information for the restrained person, you can complete a new CLETS-001 and turn it in to the court so the record used by law enforcement stays current. Keeping this information accurate matters for enforcement, since outdated details can slow down or complicate a response. Notifying the court if your address or the restrained person's known address changes. Updating vehicle information if the restrained person's vehicle changes and you become aware of it. Turning in a new CLETS-001 rather than trying to amend the original by hand. Asking your court self-help center if you are unsure how to submit updated information. Common mistakes to avoid. Leaving CLETS-001 blank or skipping it entirely when filing a request for a restraining order. Assuming CLETS-001 becomes part of the public case file. And leaving out details out of privacy concerns when accuracy is what protects you. Forgetting to update CLETS-001 when an address or other identifying detail changes. Confusing CLETS-001 with the request form itself, such as DV-100 or CH-100, rather than filing both. Because CLETS-001 works together with your underlying request, it helps to review that form first. If your situation involves someone you have a close relationship with, our guide on how to fill out Form DV-100 covers that request in detail. If keeping track of all of this by hand feels like a lot, that is exactly what Virdix is built for. The wizard at Virdix.co walks you through these same questions in plain language and prepares your CLETS-001 for you. Virdix is a document preparation service, not a law firm, so this is not legal advice, but it can help make sure your paperwork is complete and consistent from the start.